Okay, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters from Pakistan and other places across the world. It gives us great pleasure to have our second Shara Sadr session, which is an initiative from Pakistan, where our goal is to enhance knowledge in the area of psychology and Islam, integrate together and coming up with new research. And by the mercy of Allah and the gratitude, we are very, very blessed to have such amazing people doing amazing work. And one such person today is Dr. Tamkeen Saleem. We'll introduce her very soon. But just before we begin to our session, a little bit about ISIP and ISIP Pakistan. So ISIP stands for International Students of Islamic Psychology, where our vision and mission is to enhance knowledge in the area of Islam and psychology. So the father of Islamic psychology, the precious Dr. Malik Badri, who initiated this entire concept and did some research, and from there onwards, it has started branching out. So Alhamdulillah, today after a few years, ISIP started post-COVID. जिसमें ISIP is a global movement where our mission is to disseminate information and knowledge for free to all those people who want to venture into the field of religion and Islamic psychology or psychology itself, but also to enhance our own personal development. मतलब हम अपने ऊपर भी काम करते हैं और जो हम इस फील्ड में आना चाहते हैं विद द अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ इस्लाम एंड हाउ वी कैन आइडेंटिफाई इस्लामिक इंटरवेंशंस कि बहुत ज़्यादा स्टीरियोटाइप्स टिपिकल इन्वायरमेंट रह चुका है व्हेन इट कम्स टू मुस्लिम क्लाइंटेल तो उन सब चीज़ों को कैटर करने के लिए वी हैव अ लॉट ऑफ वर्क हैपनिंग all around the world and also in Pakistan, Alhamdulillah. Last time हमारी बात हुई थी with Professor Dr. Muhammad Khalili, who also have done amazing work in the field. And today, mashallah, we have Dr. Tamkeen Saleem from Islamabad. So, इस तरीके से Islamic ISIP Global has branched out into ISIP regional chapters. जिसमें Pakistan is one chapter, ISIP India, ISIP Malaysia, ISIP Turkey, ISIP now is, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, is really diversifying. And the kind of groups we run, sisters can now post the WhatsApp links of different groups. तो जो लोग नए हैं आज, they can join them and you will get access to different researches. You can get access to a lot of learning and all of them for free. And one more thing that I'm forgetting here is before I invite our gracious speaker, we will start with a little dua or a surah. And Sister Fatma, would you like to go ahead with any surah or should we just do it?
It's okay. I can do it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khair. Yes, so unfortunately, what the goal that we had was we had wanted to do a 1.5 hour session, but due to certain limitations, time thoda kam hoga. So I'm not going to go into too much of detail of ISIP Pakistan. For those who are really interested, the links are now coming on your screen in our chat. तो आप वहाँ पे कोई भी query हो, आप वहाँ पे डाल दीजिएगा, or you just join the link so you will be getting access to the groups, different groups all across ISIP Global also. Now I'm going to also share some rules. Alhamdulillah, everybody is already on mute. If anybody has a question, तो आप लोग अपने question chat box पे ही लिख लीजिएगा. So during our Q&A time, we can have the question answers there. I think it will be better ताकि हमारा flow जो है वो smoothly run हो. And now is the moment where I'm really feeling honored to welcome our speaker, And she's I haven't met her. I'm from Karachi. She's in Islamabad, and she's done a lot of work in the field of psychology and Islam, and still doing, alhamdulillah. And she's going to open the session with one topic which is right there in front of us. So Dr. Tamkeen Saleem, um, she has a PhD in psychology 2017 se. She is the dean of Shifa University at Islamabad. Just a moment. And yes, here it is. She has a psychologist for more than 15 years and interested in the area of teaching, training, research, and counseling. She's a meritorious scholar who has received many academic awards, mashallah. And her research interests include, but are not limited to, family psychology, emotional regulation, social competence, adolescent psychology, art therapy, and religiosity. Jisme Islam aa raha hai andar. And she has, mashallah, mashallah, really proud to say this. She has done 40 publications in national and international journals. So I'm deeply honored to welcome Dr. Tamkeen Saleem. We would like you to unmute yourself, and if you could also show your video if you're comfortable.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you
Right.
so much, Faizan, for the introduction. But I would just like to make one correction. That is, I'm not the dean. I'm the head of the Department of
Head
Clinical
of department,
Psychology.
yes, sir.
Yes, right. So I think probably there is a number of years to be the dean or something like that. If Allah wills, that may happen. Let's see. Thank you so much for providing me this opportunity to get connected with the students at ISIP. I do not have much of grasp of information and knowledge with respect to probably Islamic concepts, but I just try to make some kind of efforts in order to see psychological perspectives and its concepts by linking it up with Islam or some kind of thing that we can say that Islamic perspective. So we would be having a discussion today regarding the religiously integrated forgiveness therapy. That is a psychotherapeutic tool, I believe. And many times when we are interacting, when we are dealing with our clients in the therapeutic settings, sometimes we just do not focus on the aspect that probably forgiveness can be channelized as a therapeutic tool and it may help the therapist as well as the client in order to gain some kind of benefit and some kind of healing from the whole process of the forgiveness process. So, probably today, because it's a very difficult topic, vast topic as well regarding forgiveness. So, firstly, I would like to have focus on forgiveness. Probably much more time would be taken into having discussion or my comments regarding what is forgiveness. And as I proceed, I would like you to connect your experiences and your concepts as well. Probably I might not be able to discover everything today, or I might not be able to respond to each and every query of yours because 1 hour we would probably exceed from 1 hour. But still, it is very difficult to cover all this in just 1 hour or so, right? So, focusing on and moving ahead, Fatma, could you just help me out in the second slide? Thank you so much. So, firstly, we will discuss regarding that what is harm. Is it working?
Just a moment.
Okay, yes, right.
There it is.
Thank you, Fatma. So, when we talk about harm, more consistently, we have understanding of that harm is something physical. But harm can have various perspective or aspects. It is physical, it may be psychological, it is some sort of emotional damage that has been done by someone to someone. I would be interchangeably using different terminologies, transgressors and transgress, wrongdoer, guilty party, different terminologies would be used, but basically the focus would be that there would be one person who is creating the harm, or is the one who is considered to be guilty, and there is another person who is the one who is unforgiving one, right? So physical harm, it is very much apparent and easily understood. Sometimes this physical harm is often accompanied by emotional and psychological harm as well. The person that has experienced harm from one person to their body or probably to their property, in addition, experiences some sort of psychological and emotional harm. And sometimes harm is that there is no physical harm as such, but the harm may be only and only psychological or emotional in nature. For example, we were having some discussion with a few people, and the person actually reported about that he belongs to Multan, and people call him names. And when it was discussed that what is the term or name that is being taken for the person, so he said, people call me Dachi because of the reason that he was very tall, and in Multan, Dachi means a camel. So he always used to get very much offended by that thing. So we see that just one name is being labeled onto a person in order to tease that. So there is the concept of bullying that is at work. The person feels humiliated, the person feels shaming. So in a way, sometimes people do that in a very funny way. However, it is bringing some kind of harm or emotional damage to other person. And sometimes that person has to experience or undergo experiences which actually eventually lead to unforgiveness, and that unforgiveness further leads to many other aspects and domains of psychology, or you can say mental health aspects are actually affected by that. So the next slide, that is only and only focusing on the aspect that forgiveness is not easy. Forgiving others is not a weakness, rather, it takes a strong person to forgive. So, when a person has to forgive, it is not a little thing. And forgiveness is not just a statement to be said that, oh, I forgive you. Rather, it is a whole new experience. And today we'll be focusing on that, what is forgiveness and what is not forgiveness. Next slide, please. So, forgiveness, in a psychological sense, it is intentional and voluntary process by which one who may have felt initially wrong, victimized, harmed, or hurt goes through a process. So, we need to understand that forgiveness is a complete process, a process that works in order to change the feelings and attitudes regarding the offender or the transgressor or the person who is actually responsible for the harm brought to the individual, and to overcome the impact of the offense, flaw, or the mistakes which may be resultant in some sort of negative emotions, where people may be holding some kind of resentment, or they may be having a desire for having some kind of revenge. And uh, but when we talk about forgiveness, it is important to see that how a person may actually forgive, or um, I think it's at times more difficult to seek forgiveness from other person. And it's also important to understand that how the reconciliation may take place, and in certain situations the reconciliation in the relationship may be required, and in some instances, some cases, the reconciliation may not be required with someone who has actually offended the person or whom they have offended, right? And additively, there is one more scenario that has to be observed, that something for which forgiveness has to be processed. Is it something that is real? That is, the emotional wounds that the individual is having, are those real or perceived actions? Or to some extent, we can also say that there may be some kind of inaction due to which a person got hurt or harmed, and the person feels like that the person is unable to forgive the other person. So there are much of the questions that actually revolve around the whole psychological process of forgiveness. How people who have been offended may give forgiveness, and how the offenders may request or receive it. And sometimes how they may give forgiveness even when their offender is not actually asking them to forgive, or how to seek reconciliation, how two or more people, once having maturely given, um, they can receive forgiveness, or they can continue with the relationship that would be having mutual trust as well as mutual respect for each other. So, the conception of forgiveness and the model of the forgiveness that we will be discussing today would be something that has been based on psychological as well as philosophical concepts. It also integrates religious and spiritual aspects which are connected to it, and its groundings are within Islam. So, the point is the term that we use it is religiously integrated. So, it is the foundation is basically by the Enright model that we will be discussing in a while. But I just want you to have this understanding that the model has been developed by Enright, who does recognize that, or it took years to him and his teammates in order to identify that how a person can flourish spiritually, and how a person can request or receive forgiveness whenever it is appropriate, and when actually it is appropriate. So this model actually, in general, it encourages those trying to forgive or be forgiven. And when we are talking specifically our own model that we have utilized for the therapeutic modality, we are actually adding into it, or we are integrating the Islamic aspects of spirituality and religious principles, as well as the religious traditions or resources which are actually meaningful to Muslims. Next slide, please.
Just to excuse a little here, Dr. Tamkeen, we're having a few questions. Would you like the questions to be answered abhi, or you want it towards the end?
Okay, let me just see. I have this.
Basically, their questions are
I'm not
based on,
seeing the window. Just a second. Let me just switch to the charts. Okay. Okay. How do you
because you were
define
explaining the
harm?
concept, so I just thought if those could be. So, Sister Saida Samia has asked about the difference between psychological or emotional. Are they the same?
Okay.
And how do you
Uh,
define? Would you answer now?
Okay, there could be something that is only and only at a cognitive level, right? That you are just thinking about something, but you do not have, you are not attaching your emotions with that. There are different circumstances, and it's when actually there is one phenomena that we are going to discuss in a while that probably further may help you understand that when forgiveness is forgiveness, and when forgiveness we consider it as forgiveness, but in fact it is not forgiveness, right? So an emotional aspect is when there are negative emotions that are being involved, and the person actually feels there is association of the feelings connected with the event that took place, right? And how do you define harm? Harm can be any emotional damage, or harm can be any information that you hold on to and you do not feel comfortable to it. And uh, the point is that when we will be actually having focus on forgiveness, you, or a concept of forgiveness, you will better understand that what how we are defining the harm. As I said,
Mm.
that sometimes it would be a perceived harm which may
Mm.
be unreal, and sometimes it may be that action has actually took place, it is real, and sometimes it could be that it was something that you expected of. However, it never took place, right? So, is I hope that would be clear. And further, when we will, because we are having some kind of limitation of time, so I would like to address forgiveness over there. And if there will be any question, we will address that later on. Okay?
All right, yes. Jazakallah.
Okay, so we are on here. Okay. So, Human Development Study Group at University of Wisconsin. This group actually met weekly for years just to define that what forgiveness is, from the philosophical aspects, psychological aspects, psychiatric aspects, before finally settling on the definition. And the outcome of their work was that they defined that it is a willingness to abandon one's right to resentment, negative judgment, and indifferent behavior to one who unjustly injured us while fostering the undeserved qualities of compassion, generosity, and even love towards him or her. And if I just bring it up, that how I would be defining harm would be that something, an event that took place for which the person was hurt, and then the person is holding some kind of resentment against the other person. They might be having the negative judgment. They might be having a kind of behavior of that may be avoiding or ridiculing them, or there is also possibility that looking for the avenues to take the revenge, right? And people keep on fostering all those things. And uh, forgiveness would be when all that is actually over there. However, the person tries to be kind to another person, tries to utilize the compassion and generosity towards the other person. So, uh, in other words, we can say that forgiveness is not eliminating the wrong, right? That someone has done something wrong to you or harm to you, and it does not mean that we excuse a person for what they have done. Like sometimes it's like we simply say that no, no, it was nothing big, but deep down we are holding something. We are having complete experience of the emotion. We felt the complete uh, anger into ourselves, but we just pretend to say no, 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 it's all okay, it was all fine. So that is a superficial thing that we are stating. However, we are holding something beneath whatever we are stating. So the point is that it is very much important to accept this fact that yes, the other person did something that was wrong. So we still see that person as that person has done something wrong to us, or the person has transgressed us, but the person who is responsible for it, uh, what we do is that the real forgiveness is to be meaningful. And if we say that there is no wrong, so that means that there is no wrongdoer or no guilty one, or none of the person. So when there is no wrong and no wrongdoer, right? So there is nothing that one can actually forgive. So the first level would be that accepting that there is something that we are holding against a person or an event, or probably our own self as well. Sometimes it's difficult to forgive our own self. Sometimes we have to work on ourselves to forgive ourselves regarding a particular event or some action that we have carried out. Next slide, please. Okay, so healthy forgiveness is an emotional state when the person who has been hurt does not feel hurt anymore, feels peaceful, trust the guilty party again. However, it is not necessarily to weave this aspect over here, to trust a person or to reconcile with the relation. We will be discussing that in the later part. So, what we can say is that forgiveness is essentially the foregoing of the resentment or the revenge when the offender or the wrongdoer's action deserved it. Islam says that instead, what we do is that we provide the offender the gift of mercy, generosity, and love, which means that when we are forgiving a person who actually deserves it, or a person who has come to us who is repenting, that person becomes like a person who we feel like that this person actually deserves our forgiveness, right? However, we need to forgive a person even when the person has not asked for forgiveness. Right? So because the beneficence is not only for the other person who has to be forgiven, rather, uh, when we hold on to resentment, anger, fear, or all the negative emotions, what happens is that we keep on breeding that anger to which the other person probably is entitled. However, we are breeding it in ourselves. So the point is that why we should forgive the other person without even asking it, without being deserving it, or without considering that he is not entitled to it, is that the person who is holding on to all this unforgiveness also has a right to happiness. It also has a right to get healed. That is why it is important. I don't say that forgiveness is easy, and there would be so many questions that would be emerging in your mind. And definitely, forgiving is not easy, but it depends on the seriousness of the offense, the length of the time that has passed by, that the person offended the individual. There is also possibility that the other person denied the harm that caused the offense actually. Um, I would say that the major obstacle for forgiving another person is misunderstanding what the forgiveness is. And that is what I have experienced while dealing with or processing this forgiveness by the clients when they are working to forgive other people. So, people who would benefit from forgiving sometimes mistakenly assume that to forgive, they must do what is impossible or even wrong. Another obstacle may be that one's um, parents or primary caregivers may never have shown forgiveness, or they may have modeled something which we will be discussing as pseudo forgiveness. It's just like, I forgive you, or simply denying that harm occurred or it was for their corrective measure. So, or sometimes people tend to state that we forgive because of the reason that they want to manipulate or gain some sort of moral superiority, probably over the other person who is offender. I just used the terminology that was pseudo forgiveness that we will be covering in the next slide. Fatma, could you please go to the next slide? Okay. This is just a slide that is basically referring to something that I asked a wise person that how many times we should forgive a person. And the person responded with that as many times as you would like Allah to forgive you. Right. And we do see in that in Quran, forgiveness is one of the moral traits that is recommended in Quran. And hold to forgiveness, command what is right, and turn away from the ignorant. Another verse also states that you should rather pardon and overlook. Would you not love Allah to forgive you? Allah is ever forgiving and merciful. So, in a way, not in a way, rather, truly, it is a trait of Allah. And obviously, following something that is a trait of Allah, uh, processing it in our own self, it's not an easy job. Next slide, please. Okay, so pseudo forgiveness. Um, since after experiencing harm, a person feels hurt, angry, sad, there may be confusion. They do not know what happened, how it happened. They were not expecting it from that particular person. There may be fear or any other unpleasant emotion because the emotional state might last for a while. The aggrieved individuals sometimes convince themselves, or sometimes they are convinced by other people as well, because people often discuss about these things that, and they are guided by the person that they should repress those unpleasant emotions and make them feel forgiveness and act as if everything is fine. So the term is very clear that we act as if everything is fine, but in reality, everything is not fine. So this whole phenomena is known as pseudo forgiveness, or in simple terms, we can say that there is false forgiveness, जो शायद हम दूसरों को बेवकूफ बनाने के लिए भी कर रहे होते हैं, and probably to our own self as well. It often is the reason why people experience some sort of serious mental, physical, or probably social health problems as well. By social health problems, I mean that people become distant to social gathering or people around them. They do not interact much. So there may be changes in their social interaction with the rest of the world. Um, if I just connect it up with the science, we can say that in simple terms, when there is unforgiveness, uh, it is actually a stress reaction or it is an emotional reaction, and it arouses corresponding negative emotion. Lots and lots of negative emotions actually occur because of this unforgiveness state or because of the harm. And research does indicate that activity in the brain during the unforgiveness is consistent with the activity in the brain structures and hormonal patterns, which are actually involved in stress and other negative emotions. So there is close similarity in all that is experienced by the individual. So probably I'm talking about something that is idealized situation of forgiveness, and it is not that easy to forgive or because the fact that the other person or the guilty party uh, don't want to or cannot meet the requirements for forgiveness doesn't mean that there cannot be any kind of relationship maintained. Let's suppose if that is at work, we have to interact with that person daily, right? And we have to have the professional and working relationship with them as well. And but the other person probably denied or did not seek forgiveness, but we have to process it ourselves so that we can be happy. But we do not have to pretend to be satisfied with it. So it often might be the case that the guilty party fails to or doesn't want to or cannot meet the necessary requirements of for forgiveness. But there is also possibility that there is another situation where you may never see the person again. Um, for example, you were robbed by someone. You feel bad. You feel hurt. You lost something that was a prized possession of yours. It was a gift by someone who is probably no more there, right? So you do feel difficulty, but however, there is a possibility that it may be some kind of transient thing. You may forget it or you may forgive it. However, it might be that full and adequate compensation is not possible in some situation. For example, if your loved one was killed or murdered, so obviously for the wrongdoer, you would be holding a lot more anger. And probably sadness would be there as well. It would be connected with the whole concept of forgiveness as well. Um, so we can say that the person has a right to be happy in all the situation. Nothing can be brought back. The situations cannot be undone. The other person is not going to ask for forgiveness. Probably the person is no more in the world, probably not in any contact. So still, there is a requirement to process that. And to process that, the first thing is that accepting of the harm. Second thing is realizing and accepting the loss that we have experienced. And then sometimes afterwards, what happens is that there is possibility that we might be able to get back to the healthy, authentic, non-pseudo state of calmness, awareness, probably mindfulness, as well as some level of happiness as well, if we work upon that. So, two things are necessary. First is acceptance, and the second thing is the loss that they have experienced for that. Okay, next slide, please. So, pseudo forgiveness happens when the aggrieved party doesn't understand, deny, or minimize the harm that has been done. This point has been covered, so I'm not going to describe that again. Or feels unjustly guilty. They blame themselves either for what happened to them or for the fact that the offender feels bad. or probably they feel confused. Um, like, for example, people have set some kind of philosophies, or they might be having some kind of mental set, or probably there are some kind of thoughts that are actually instilled by society or our family. Like, for instance, uh, a person just states that the person is a wife and the wife is hurt by the behavior of the husband. And she states that, yes, my husband beats me, but he's my husband, and I've promised to be with him till the death do us apart. Right. So here there is some kind of confusion state that is there. The person is not actually accepting. The person is not actually realizing the loss. However, the person would be actually holding some kind of unforgiveness in himself or in herself, right? So these are actually, to some extent, we may say that there is error in the thinking and the logic, for which sometimes we have to go for some kind of working on the cognitions of the individual and make them realize that what forgiveness is actually, or they are confused in this aspect. Empathy with the guilty party too much. This is another scenario that which is very much interesting, that pseudo forgiveness is when we empathize with another person to such an extent that we do not realize that we have experienced some kind of loss at the hand of the other person, and we do not accept it. So that is why I said that there are two things that are required to be present, right? Um, is afraid of other people reaction, because we are too much concerned regarding that what other people would actually think. So if one recognizes the harm and the unpleasant emotions would be there, there is a possibility that other people might laugh at me, they might condemn me, they might humiliate me, or probably reject me as well. So that is why they do not want to accept it, or they're just afraid of the reaction of the world around them. In any way, it stops the natural process of acceptance and grieving the harm that they have experienced. Next slide, please. Okay, self forgiveness. So, as I mentioned previously as well, that sometimes we have to forgive our own self as well, and self forgiveness is required, and forgiving ourselves is important for us. We may be holding on to some event which we consider that it is sinful, or we might be having guilt for hurting another person, or being wrong at time, or having shame for the past action or decisions. So self forgiveness again involves acknowledging our imperfections, taking responsibility for our actions, showing ourselves compassion and understanding, just like we show compassion and understanding to the other people. It is about learning from our mistakes. Um, Forgiveness at times is a daily activity, I think. It's not a one time event, it's a daily practice. Some days it is easier to forgive, some days it's more challenging to forgive. It requires a lot of patience, self compassion. Even when we are forgiving other people, it requires self compassion actually, and a commitment to let go of whatever we are experiencing. Okay, I think we're short of time. Um, Next slide, please. Okay, here are some steps. The slides would be shared with you, so you would be able to go through them. I would like to have more focus on the intervention, and I would just like you to have a bit of experience regarding this particular model that we have actually evolved, that we have used. Right? So it is actually based on this model that I previously mentioned, that is by Enright, and that has been integrated by Islamic principles. So the first phase here you see that is the uncovering phase, where an individual actually gains insight into whether and how the harm or the injustice occurred, and how it actually compromised the life of the individual, right? This involves confronting the nature of offense, Further, it involves uncovering the consequences, how it has impacted the life of the individual. So a fundamental step is to finding it out, that what is the nature of offense and how it has compromised one life, and we have to view it objectively, as objectively as possible. And it is important to see that if the person feels that offense has not occurred, so obviously the person would not be able to forgive that person. And another aspect is that sometimes people hold unforgiveness to something that has been, how I say, that is a harm that is done to another person, right? So people cannot forgive an offense that is committed against another person. However, they can forgive the secondary or indirect effect. By that I mean that one can forgive the emotional pain or the distress or the loss experienced by oneself, because the loved one or the other person who is important to the person, that person was actually victimized. So it won't be like that the person will be forgiving for the other person. It would be again forgiveness towards the emotional pain that was experienced by the person because the loved one was hurt. So sometimes people do not understand this aspect as well. While uncovering, we have to explore that. I would just like you to indulge yourself in an activity. If you could just take out a paper in front of you, and if you could just make some kind of columns into it. And if you could just write down, it could be in the columns or it could be simply on the piece of paper, that if you could just write, if you could just bring to your mind any specific event where you were hurt and you accept that you were hurt and you understand that you experienced the loss, and whatever happened to you consider that to be the unfair treatment, right? So what I want you to write, that the harm that you endured, would you do that? Let me just see in the chat if people want to do that, so we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll just skip it. Okay, Sarah Said says yes. Okay, so I've asked you to write down, just mention the harm that you endured. What happened? You don't need to write it onto the paper. It would be into your mind. However, if you will be doing this activity, you can later on also execute that. And just write down the unfair treatment. The treatment that you felt was unfair. You have to write down. Okay, for those who are doing that, I would be a bit slow so that you can write it, and then I will continue. Okay. Next, you may write down that if you have denied, but I said that you have to first see that you have accepted. Okay, don't focus on the denied. Just write down the if you made any attempt to forget it. Next, just write down that in what ways have you avoided the feelings or dealings with your anger. I will right now here just focus on anger because it would be more easier to execute it right now, because it's convenient and easier to relate anger for something for which you have been hurt or harmed.
Can you please repeat all the steps? Because I was just trying to find a paper and pencil.
Okay.
So
Okay. Right.
can you please repeat
Sure.
all the
Sure.
steps from the beginning?
Okay. Right. Right. Okay. So I asked you to think about and write about an event, right, that harmed you, right? Whatever happened to you, you can just bring it to your mind, and then we are kind of creating a chart, okay? And then unfair treatment that you a treatment that you felt it was unfair, and the harm I said previously that you accept it was a harm, and you accept that that loss was experienced to you. That is why I'm not right now asking you to mention something regarding the denial, right? But you would be writing about the attempts that have been made by you to forget it. It could be the number of attempts, it could be that simply a yes or no. Next, in what ways you avoided the feeling? Probably there may be a person who uh, might have not experienced probably anger, but maybe some other emotional state. So either you can focus on the feelings or you can simply focus on anger as well. But the point is that how you actually dealt your emotions with that, how you actually avoided those emotions. Okay, I don't know which sister was actually speaking.
Sister
So
Mala.
can we move forward?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah, please. Thank
okay,
you. Yeah.
welcome. So next, just chart it down that how all this event, not the feelings, not anything else, because how this event wholly solely affected you. It could be physical, it could be your emotional health, it could be your relationships, and it also can be your work productivity. Can we go to another slide? Um, can you just move on the slides? Okay, next. There would be next slide, worksheet next. Okay, just can you enlarge this one that is uncovering the hurt worksheet? Okay, so for the convenience, if you feel useful, you can select any of these from this specific table as well. This is a worksheet that we actually use in this therapeutic model. There are some examples given into that as well. It's not necessary to cover each domain. You can simply select one or two of them, or anyone in which you felt that your unresolved anger or your unresolved forgiveness actually had effect on the specified area. Can we move further? Next, to what extent you are preoccupied with how you were actually offended, and just rate it on a scale of 1 to 100.
Doctor, the scale from 1 to 100, where 100 is the intensity, more
Yes.
extreme intensity?
Yes, extreme intensity. Not this slide. Go back to the previous slide. Okay, yes. Okay, participants, can we move further for the next one aspect? If you're
Excuse me,
done
what
with
did you
the rating.
sorry,
I just want
yes,
you to
sorry.
rate that to what extent you are preoccupied that you were offended or how you were offended.
Hmm.
For how long also?
Hmm.
Not how long, just rate it that right now, at this moment, when you're recalling all that, what do
Hmm.
you feel or what do you think that to what extent you are preoccupied with it? When we do the individual sessions, we actually have a more length of time that we ask the person regarding that.
Yes.
And lastly, write down that how the offense has changed your worldview. Now, this worldview may be regarding the whole world, or it may be regarding the Allah Almighty as well.
Hmm.
There is possibility that you are no more loving. There is possibility you are no more friendly to every individual, or probably there could be situation that you have become more closer to Allah Almighty, or there may be a possibility that you have become deviant, or you do follow everything, but still you feel like that deep down you think like that um, you have some kind of negative beliefs, or some kind of hurtness or harm that you relate it with Allah Almighty. Nazubillah.
Dr. Tamkeen, I also wanted to check with you is, will you be okay to extend 5 to
Yeah,
6
I'm fine
months?
with it. I'm fine.
Okay.
I hope the
Jazakallah.
participants are okay with it.
Jazakallah, yes.
Okay, are you done with it?
Yes, I am.
So,
But the
what
others?
right now we are doing is that we are just uncovering forgiveness, right? So, that is the stage that we referred to forgiveness, uncovering forgiveness. Fazan or Fatma, whoever is controlling the slides, could you please move back to the slide that was
Back
showing the Enright model?
in model. Okay, in right model. Yes. There we go.
Okay, right. So, this was regarding uncovering phase. Okay,
Uncover.
I would not go into much of discussion. However, I would like to ask you that while reading about it, while writing about it, was there a chain of thoughts that came to your mind, and or is it that your mind was completely blank? You can just write down in the text box, chat box. Anyone? You don't need to be too specific regarding that. Okay, blank. how to let go. Thoughts came about it in a sequence for me. Okay, right. Blank for a moment, that thoughts start coming. Okay, right. So it is a process. We are actually digging out something. We are actually focusing on something for which we have to accept. One thought led to the next. Repeat the same incidents. Okay. Okay. This was an event that took place in past, right? While reporting about it, we have come across different questions to which you would have responded. However, when you are writing all this, that took place some time back, probably it could be something that happened in the morning, probably something that happened in a distant past, that was 1 month back, 1 year back, 5 years back, or so on. But right now, when you were writing it down, were there any emotions involved? Did you experience any emotions? Simply write yes or no. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you had the emotions with you. You do accept that there was something wrong done. You do accept, yes, I felt some weird pain in the chest, shoulder part, and bit of anxiety. Okay, right. So there is much more that is going on. So superficially, we have probably sent it back in our memory. However, there is a possibility that it still is there, and whenever we think about it, so probably there is a need to work upon it. Okay. Sister Mahalaka says that no, I did not feel anything. Okay. Um, there can be various situations, right? A person who is initially completely blank then brings about an event to mind and starts working about it. And the person does not feel anything at this moment. Right? It could be that the person has actually forgiven that person, or that particular incident is no more there, and the person has actually forgiven the person, or at times it may be that the person just feels indifferent to it. There can be different scenarios with that, right? So when we are having all this discussion, the important aspect over here that I wanted you all to experience was that uncovering. It is all about us that we are doing it right now. But doing it with another person is a difficult thing, because you have to make them process that information, in which there would be so much that would be going on, and they might be having this perception that probably as a therapist, because people have different perception, that you may judge them, you may consider that they are a bad person and so on. So that has to be covered up in the first session, where you actually build your rapport and you provide them complete information regarding that whatever would be discussed, it would be part of therapeutic session and so on. So next is the decision phase to forgive, right? When we talk about the decision phase to forgive, this is the time when the person actually gains an accurate understanding of the nature of forgiveness, that it is real or it is something uh, that is serious or something that is not very serious, makes a decision to commit to forgiving on the basis of this particular understanding, that was the nature of the forgiveness. Here we have previously worked upon that what is forgiveness and what is not forgiveness, right? However, when we are doing the therapeutic sessions, firstly we uncover And then we discuss regarding that what is forgiveness and what is not forgiveness. There are the Islamic point of view is, or we can say that our religious, spiritual, and to some extent cultural mandates are that we are required to forgive the offender. And but our religion does state that forgiveness is a free choice because बदले का concept भी है. आँख के बदले आँख, नाक के बदले नाक, ये भी है. So forgiveness has to be a free choice. We cannot pressurize a person to forgive, and that's what actually happens in real life situation. That we make another person to forgive the other person, right? So the person should be willing to forgive. So what we offer in this decision phase is that to consider this particular option to forgive, and then we relate it that what is forgiveness, what is actually involved in forgiveness, what is the conception of forgiveness. So those would be different kind of questions. There would be discussions regarding it. There is also a possibility that people sometimes just create a persona of their offender. Um, it could be that the persona is already there, or it could be that after the hurtful experience, the person develops the persona, or which could be that idolizes that person or demonizes the offender, which might just state that they are not entitled to have the forgiveness. They're so mean, they are such a demon that they cannot be forgiven or they are unforgivable. So we have to work on that and see that the individual is required to ask that, am I willing to consider forgiveness as a choice for my offender? Okay, so if I ask you to write down on the same piece of paper or come to your mind that if you are willing to forgive your offender, the response would be your own, right? If you write it yes, we can further move in the process. If you write it no, if your answer is no, then create some answer for it that would be like that what actually stops you for being unwilling to actually try to forgive, or we can use the relative degrees of that at least you may try to forgive, or are you ready to forgive? So, or you can try, are you ready to try to forgive, right? So I would like you to just jot that down, that what actually stops you to being unwilling to forgive the other person. And those who have stated a yes, can you just write down that to what extent you have decided to forgive? Again, on a scale of 1 to 100. Would you do that? Where we can place the acceptance of expecting that kind of treatment from the person. Say that, Samya, I'll get back to your question after completing the slide. Take it.
Actually, I was, excuse me, Madam Tasmia, that's your name. I'm so sorry. Taskeen, Tamkeen. This is a very new name for me. So, anyways, I was just wanted to tell you that actually the scenario that I chose into my mind, the first one, I realized that I've already forgiven, and that was 100% forgiveness. So I'm quickly changing this scenario to some other where I know that I have not forgiven the person.
Okay,
So
okay,
I'm going to create that in my mind now.
okay, right. So if you have done the rating, that to what extent you have decided to forgive. Next thing is, are you committed to trying to forgive now, at this moment, at this time?
And for the other people who don't want to forgive, for them, what the activity is for us, for the other
Okay.
who are not
Uh,
ready to forgive yet?
yes. They need to just find it out that what actually stops them, right? And then after that, what they can do is that they can just identify that what can be the pros and cons of forgiving. Can we move further in the slides? There is a slide for the decision phase. Next, 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 next. Okay, here, back please. Thank you. So here, in this manner, you can utilize that the person may, it can be helpful for a person to decide to forgive. That what are the pros in case a person forgives, and what can be the cons if the person does not forgive. And then we can balance and we can discuss that if the pros outdoes the cons. So there would be the evidence that actually the individual would be generating the evidence for themselves that how beneficial it would be to forgive the other person, and what can be the disadvantages, or what can be the consequences if the person does not forgive.
This, I just have to add on, this is extremely helpful. It just reminded me of one of my clients who is actually stuck here. And I was
Mhm.
just thinking what strategy to use, and now I just got the perfect thing. Jazakallah.
Okay. I'm glad that it is helpful for you.
Yes, yeah.
But sister, there is one thing, like if you want to forgive someone and they are not helping you to
Mhm.
let them forgive, because you have tried everything you have done, you have made your heart so big and have tried to forgive all their offensive actions and everything, but again and again they are not allowing you to forgive them because they are keeping doing the same things, and that's hurtful to you, and there is no move from their direction, there is nothing that is indicating from their
Mhm.
direction that they want any kind of reconciliation or any kind of goodwill or good actually any kind of relationship to have with you, uh, in spite of you doing everything, and they are very close relation, that they should, if they should think about Allah and Rasul, that these relationships are not, should not be cut off or should not be like that, but they don't consider anything in spite of you asking forgiveness and everything, and there was not anything that you did that wrong to them. Actually
Yes,
they are the ones who are doing very wrong with you. So what
right.
can be done in this situation?
Okay. Uh, in this situation, this is a situation which where there is more challenge, right? Because you are having the ongoing interaction with that person continuously, and it is not just one incident. Rather, the incidents are on a repeat mode. Probably you're experiencing something daily, and the chain of the thoughts and the incidents, they keep on coming, right? So, for that matter, in this particular situation, the attempts are required to be made for reconciliation, in which there would be involvement of the other person. So, when we are doing this mode of therapy, what we do is that in such situation, we actually make individual involved into that. For example, when we do that for the married couples, right? They are connected, they are united, and there would be one person who is holding the unforgiveness and consider that the guilty party is the wrongdoer, right? And daily something happens more and more. They interact, they discuss, sometimes even discuss, they've superficially or pseudo forgiveness would be there, and there is one person who is in complete denial that I don't do anything. So that person would be involved into the activity, right? That person would be having his or her own role into it. So it would be like that, it would be going in the doers, just like we for in the marital counseling, what we do is that we have separate sessions, right, with the wife, with the husband, and then we have some kind of sessions which are held in the presence of both. We have different activities and different aspects to be discussed with them. So in this situation, there is possibility that that person is so close to the person, so that that person can be involved. It would become more effective, because here our ultimate goal is reconciliation. If the reconciliation would not be there, it would be very difficult, because it would be just
Yeah.
one-sided.
Yeah, but if that relationship is not of this kind, like I understand that with the spouse it is possible, but if the
Mm-hmm.
relationship is not that thing that you, and you don't even live very close, but your ties, I mean the blood ties, like like sister and brothers, sometimes they have brothers and their wives are involved, and they don't let the wives, they play the part, and they just don't let you interact with your family, and they cut off the ties with your brothers, and in spite of you making a lot of I'm just talking very
I
openly
understand.
because
I understand.
I feel like these issues should be discussed. I think they are
Mhm.
very common, and I have
Yeah.
heard many. Yeah. So and they live very far off. You are not living close to them that you can even meet them, and now it is very easy for them.
Mhm.
I'm just talking about the, because the wife, she has nothing to do with you directly, so she doesn't care, right? But you
Right.
want to keep ties with your brother's family and with their
Mhm.
children, and but she is because it's in her advantage, you don't even live close to them, so it's in her
Mhm.
advantage. She's just letting it be like that, and she's not at all interested to keep any relationship with you,
Right.
and she hasn't done anything, and they live so far, so you cannot do anything. And then on top of that, she keeps on doing things like things that always makes you hurt when you listen that, oh, their son is getting married, this is happening, they are not telling you, they're not taking your blessings, they're not telling you, and other people, all your cousins and everybody is going there, and they're inviting everyone, and you are their immediate, like their real brother and sisters, but they are not involving you, they are not. So it's very hurtful, they keep on
Yeah.
doing things like this, and they're not making
Sister.
building any relationship. So what
Uh,
is like, how, and you get hurt upon hurt upon hurt, and
right.
then you are unable to forgive, you want to forgive them, but they're not
Mm.
letting you to do anything about it. So what
Yes.
is? Mhm.
Probably here, if I just get one aspect, and I would like to, if such is the scenario, I would like to work on a client's thought that is regarding that we should be okay with not being included.
Okay.
Many times in our culture, and specifically in Pakistani culture, I don't know, there might be people belong to various other cultures as well. We just get very much offended with the fact that we were not included. हमें तो पूछा नहीं. So we have expectations related to that, and we want to be included, and that is why we just get offended. So once we would just make peace with this aspect, that it's okay not to be included, I think it would be meaningful for us. We will come to a peace, as
So
well as
what?
we will be able
Yeah,
to
I
be
understand
involved.
what I understand what this is a very common thing right now in this culture and in this era, that people are like very much they advocate this thing that, okay, we toxic culture and toxic family, keep away from them. But what about the Islamic perspective that you are not allowed to cut off the ties, and if you are not including your close blood relatives in, not telling about including means inviting them, not telling to invite them to your house because you don't want them to come to your house, it's okay, but just to include them in the good news, like to inform them. And you guys live countries apart, it's not that they're running, they will come because they love you running they will come to you. No, they can't come running to you, but
Mhm.
just to have that feeling that you have the blood ties with your first blood kin, like your brother and sister, just to make you feel, and they not informing you about any good news, let alone the bad news.
Right.
But
Sister,
that's
they
not
might be having this conception that to keep the evil eye off, for example, they might be having this conception to keep the evil eye off, they should not be sharing everything with somebody that they perceive. So it's something up to them.
but
So I would
but
just,
these things are not hidden. Like everybody knows when some this sort of big things happen, everybody's invited, cards are being distributed. So it's not that you can be like kind of keep it it's not like something that you can hide, these kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
it is hurtful for your immediate blood relationships when when the only thing they desire for you is they pray for you. They have
Yeah,
everything. They have
I
everything.
completely
They
understand.
won't
I
curse
completely
you or
understand.
have bad. Maybe they are more better off than you
Mm.
financially than them. So they
Um,
are not evil eyeing you anything.
this is our perception, right?
Mm.
Uh,
Mhm.
being the victim and considering them to be the wrongdoer. They would be having their own perception as well. I'll just get back to Bisma Hussein's question, and because of the time limitation, right? Probably
Mhm.
would have some other session in which we will have more and more discussion regarding that. But here,
Yeah.
what I would recommend would be that there is requirement of thought restructuring as well with reference to
Hmm.
our cultural aspects. Sister Bisma has said, would it be considered 100% if I want to forgive completely? Um, if a person states that the person wants to forgive 100%, right? There's a possibility that you may forgive person 100%. However, it is many times very much difficult to set this target because this may be an unrealistic target as well, right? So it could be you may discuss with your client regarding that this is your target 100%. However, there's a possibility that we will make an attempt to reach the most of it, right? Because if the people would not be able to state that they have 100% forgiven another person, so again they would doubt the whole process of forgiveness, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Sister Samia is raising her hand since some time. Just we
Right.
can
Brother
uh,
Can I
answer.
just
Fazan, just can we
clarify
take
this
this
little?
last thing? I'm really sorry to interrupt everybody. This is a beautiful discussion, but I just want to be mindful of time. It's 5:23 now,
Yes.
and we really need to be wrapping up. Thank you so much, Dr. Tamkeen. This has been a great session. Please, let's just try and wrap up. We can
Right.
answer Sister Samia. I think she's had her hand raised for a really long
Yes.
time.
Okay. So we have covered the decision phase, and the next phase is the working phase, right? And the working phase, it would be like that how can I would not focus on your completion of the activity. I hope that you have got the flavor of it, that how it is done, and I would just wrap it up, right? So the questions may be, or the interaction with the client, or how would you like to work upon them is that now as they accept that because the two phases have been completed, so how they're going to resolve the pain and what are the consequences of how the or what the offender did, and the offender did not treat them well. So in work phase, we make the individual understand the offender. To some extent, we can say his or her point of view of the whole scenario, as well as his or her personality. That, for example, if I ask you that what was and is your offender really like? Or what was your offender or offender's life probably when he or she was growing up? It gives us more information to stand back and view that how the offender was brought up or what were the life circumstances of that person. So how the person personality was formed, and probably the person had to undergo such kind of things that made the person a bit bitter, and that is why the person harmed them. Or what was the offender like at the time, when the person actually offended him or her. So to some extent, we discuss about that what has been the long-term history of the offender, as well as we also discuss about the long-term history of the relationship. Is there anybody saying something? Okay, so specifically, what is good as well as what is bad regarding that person. So we are just focusing right now probably on the bad aspects. So when we start thinking about the good aspect of that same person, probably our feel towards that person, our understanding toward that person, the whole situation, the whole scenario might actually change. So we are actually here empathizing with the offender, right? So how the offender was, how the offender used to treat me before the incident that took place, or how the person actually treats the other people. There's a possibility that person treats everyone alike. How that person was then, how the person is now, and also visualizing and understanding that how we actually treat the person now. This may provide us with some kind of understanding that probably we are treating that person unjustly. And probably there is requirement to process this information that yes, the person did do the wrong. But what we are doing right now, if we are avenging them, if we are avoiding them, if we are criticizing them, or if we are looking out for the avenues where we can actually take revenge or we can bad mouth about them, so probably we need to change ourselves as well. And many times when this whole process is carried out, people are able to identify that wrongdoing was done to them, but in return they have done a lot wrong to the person, which probably the person got more out of their anger to which that person was actually entitled to. And probably that sometimes also helps in forgoing and forgiving the other person. And then we bring it up with that how does Allah view my offender that is completely other than me, and how does Allah view me as a person, right? Or how would Allah want uh, me to forgive that person, or want and help me to treat my offender now after so much time that has lapsed. And here thing that we discussed previously was gift of mercy, right? Previously in the slides. So this is the phase where we actually previously we have talked about in the previous phase that was considering to forgive. And here we focus on that if the gift of mercy or if the gift of forgiveness can be given to the person despite the fact that person is not entitled to it, or there is a huge difference when the whole process is gone. People have a different outlook of the offender, and they many times change. They are more receptive for forgiving the other person. The next phase is deepening phase. In deepening phase, there is much more work that is done. We just try to find out that what is um, the increasing meaning in suffering, and if we were brought to face some kind of harm that impacted our life, so what was the intention by Allah, why Allah wanted us to feel all that, how, why Allah wanted us to experience that, what was the meaning of the suffering. uh, Through that we feel more connected with others, and many experiences which are the negative effect, they just decrease and we tend to find some kind of renewed purpose in life. So in this phase, one may discover the process of forgiving, one finds release from the emotional prison in which the person has been stuck, or the unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment, or probably the anger or sadness the individual has been experiencing, that starts changing as well. And the person experiences that it is the ability embed ability in each and every individual that they are capable of forgiveness. And here, the ability to forgive actually gets deepened. One may find new meaning in one's suffering, and a new purpose of life can be gained, and the person starts seeing that whatever happened, it happened for good. One may also discover one's own need to ask for forgiveness. In the background, I just discussed in the previous phase that probably the person may explore that whatever resentment they had or the mouth about that person and the other person, the wrongdoer, had to experience certain things. So probably something was done in return, and probably the offender also requires that the one who is actually working upon the process of forgiveness is the one who actually need to seek forgiveness as well. And when that comes into play, it makes it more convenient, because when we seek forgiveness, we want to be forgiven. So similarly, the other person who may be asking for it, who may not be asking for it, but still there is a need to forgive that person so that we can actually enjoy our life. Can we move for the next slide, please? Okay. There is one slide before that that is regarding the introduction. Um, this is just a statement that we usually use. Remember, forgiveness is a journey and it may take time, because people feel like that there would be processing of forgiveness would be really easy, but it is difficult. It takes time. And be yourself, celebrate each step forward. By choosing forgiveness, you create space for healing, growth, and a more peaceful future. And I hope that by indulging in today's activity, you would be finding, or you may be creating the space for healing, growth, and probably a more peaceful future for your own self as well. There is one more worksheet that is present. Could you just go onto the next slide? Okay. Uh, okay. This is a worksheet that we use for the work phase handout. Right, we can create some more as well. I've asked a few of these questions to you. What was life like for the offender as they grew up, and so on. And here is 6-column technique handout that is utilized in order to work upon the idea and changes of the thoughts of the individual. There can be more worksheets that may be used. There may be some kind of specified question with reference to a specific incident or the individual that can be used. Next slide, please. Can we have the next slide? Okay, here it is the deepening phase, right? All the aspects that we discussed, it can be used, or you may generate some of your own handouts for the deepening phase as well. Next slide, please.
And here ends.
Okay. So there is one more slide that is regarding sessions. Can we go back, please?
Sessions.
Okay, back.
This
Okay.
one.
So yeah, so this is the 6th session. Can we move back?
Session 2.
Back.
Session.
Okay. So we just covered all this in just 1.5 hours. It's half an hour that we have exceeded. Sorry for that. But when we do that, these sessions that are listed over here, this is in terms of the group therapy that we use. For individual therapy, we have 12 sessions, right? And for each and every phase, we have different activities and structure of the sessions. I could go along with that, but probably it would be all theoretical, and you would have not found that how we actually process all that. The information can be shared if you're interested in focusing on that. Sessions can be shared with you as well, worksheets can be shared with you, and you can indulge into the practice of that. How we have actually integrated Islamic principles is present for the second phase, that is exploration of hurt and forgiveness. That is part of the uncovering phase. Next slide, please. So if you see over here, we have the objective. Objective is same, that is in line with the uncovering phase. And here the plan is provided that the relaxation would be carried out. There would be utilization of different scriptures for that. Recitations would be used. And here at above, there is homework assignment that is from this phase 1 that is of the handout that is regarding the uncovering faith. Then there are different statements, oh, sorry, there are different references given by from Quranic verses. There are different relaxation related activities. It could be deep breathing, it could be recitation of Holy Quran, it is also listening to Surah Rahman as well. Homework assignments for each and every session is also used. There is complete structured manual um, which is available, which can be used. Soon there will be publication of that, so it would be easily available for everyone to do that. I hope that the process that you went through, it helped you out, and despite the fact that it is really really difficult to process forgiveness, but still you would have experienced something today in the session.
Jazakallah. Yes, absolutely. And this was very thought-provoking, very insightful. Alongside, we never expected you will go through an experience. So,
Okay.
of course, much more time is needed for this, and Jazakallah for expanding the time. We just have one person, jinka question, I think we tha, Sister Samia, if she could just ask you one last question, and then perhaps we'll come to a close after that.
Sure,
Sister
sure.
Samia, if you could just relate to what that is very quickly.
Jazakallah khair, brother. I will try to pose my question briefly, as briefly and precisely as possible. First thing is that does forgetting the experience, like a person, what the person has done to you, forgetting about that incident is part of forgiveness? This is
No.
my first question. And second thing is that if you say that, okay, you cannot forget whatever the thing has happened, and you have to build upon that experience and try to save yourself from those experiences in future, right? That means you must have some harboring of that emotion or that uh, feeling that you had associated with that experience. If you are not able to harbor that experience, if you are not able to have at least a minimum gesture of the disadvantage that you faced at that moment, how will you be motivated to save yourself from that position in future?
Sister, firstly, when we say that we have to forget about it, it simply means that we are avoiding the situation. We are avoiding the thought, we are avoiding whatever actually happened, and we're just trying to forget. And mostly what happens is that when we intend to forget something, we keep on repeating that to our mind. We keep bringing to our mind, and what happens is that it gets engraved more and more, and it has much more lasting effect onto us. So what we require to do is that we need to have acceptance of, that is what I said, we need to accept that there is something wrong that happened. We need to accept that the loss that we have experienced because of it, right? Then only we can work upon that. Otherwise, if we are simply saying that it is forgetting about it, so that is the pseudo forgiveness that we will be indulging into. Emotion would stay over there, thoughts would stay over there. It would be actually reflecting into our behavior. We may be having indifferent behavior towards that person. Probably we might be degrading or dealing that person, which maybe something more erroneous, or to some extent we can say that sometimes people hurt us unintentionally as well, and sometimes we feel like that probably that person has done something. So there is also something regarding the perception as well, how we are perceiving it. So when we may be at a wrong perception, we may be having a distorted perception of reality, right? So at that moment we need to have change in our thought patterns, and as well as we need to work upon our perception. And when we have this perception, sometimes we deal with other person really really badly. So it's like, it's correct that we can take revenge for a situation. I would say that it is okay to take revenge, but the revenge that you have taken, for that you may be entitled to have the revenge. But whenever you will take the revenge, whatever you would do, it would not be something good. And when you're not doing something good, Allah Almighty is not going to forgive. right? So whenever we have to process any information, so we may take the revenge, but the revenge would not be justified because what we have done is wrong. So when we are doing wrong, we will have to face the consequences of it. In our life, it will be having the impact. And many times there is possibility that we take the revenge, but still our conscience would not be at ease. And then there will time come when we will be requiring to forgive our own self that we did something wrong. Does that answer to your question?
Yes, let me also, yes, it does address my question. Let me reiterate it in another way, that, for example, if you have a situation, and you do have a freedom of retaliating. You do have a
Mhm.
freedom of asking for return. I wouldn't really like to term it as revenge. Return, okay? That is in that situation, if you convince yourself that no, I'm going to let go of my right and let it be as it is, let's move on. That
Mhm.
situation can be treated as a forgiveness stage.
Yes,
What
true,
about
true.
those
That is
people?
forgiveness. You
Yeah,
had the time, you had the possibility to take the revenge, but you
yes,
just back out from it and you do not repeat the same thing that was done to you by the other
yes,
person. So that
exactly,
is actually you have
exactly.
achieved a level that you feel like that you're not going to repeat that. You
Alhamdulillah,
have the
alhamdulillah,
possibility, you can take revenge.
alhamdulillah,
Probably
alhamdulillah.
we realize that taking the revenge is not gonna satisfy us. Rather, here, foregoing it, moving or taking a back, it would actually make us more satisfied. So that is a situation where we have reached
Alhamdulillah.
a level to forgive the other person.
Alhamdulillah. What about those situations where you are not in a position
Come
to
again?
ask for a return? What
Just a
about
second. Just a second.
those situations? What about those situations where you're not in a position to take any return?
Just a
So
second. Sister, just a second.
yeah, I can hold on.
Apology. Yes, could you please come again?
Yeah, what about those situations where you are not in a position to ask for a return?
What do you mean by that? Could you just further elaborate it?
For example, if uh, you are not in a position to ask for a return, maybe you are not in a position to assert your even basic rights or
Mm-hmm.
any kind of emotional rights, and if you're not in a position, you are in such a restricted position that you cannot do anything just to stay quiet.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal
Okay.
with those kinds of situations?
Okay. The point is that you have to stay quiet in that particular situation. Is it afterwards that the event has taken place or the event is actually going on?
Even after the incident has happened, right?
Okay.
For example, in a certain situation, it's better to be, if someone is on the higher mode, it's better that you remain on a calmer mode, because it
Mhm.
helps to diffuse the situations, right? But diffusing the situation is not the solution all the time.
Yes.
Even if the incident has passed, and if you still feel that you're not in a position to assert yourself, what do
Mhm.
you do then?
Okay. Uh, it is fine at times. The point is that is it avoidance that is dysfunctional or is it avoidance that is functional, right? There can be situation where the situations may escalate if you would interact with that person, and there would be situations where it is now feasible to talk about that person. So the point is all that whether it is serious, whether the time has passed, whether there is reconciliation that is required, or sometimes we are becoming quiet, but is it something that is still functional or we have become indifferent? A person comes into the corridor and you just change your pathway, right? Without seeing the person, or you just make we just make different expressions and then we just leave the corridor. right? Indicating that we are upset with you, but we don't want to talk about it, we don't want to process that. So the situations would vary, but it has to be something, if it is something functional, so it is okay with it. But if it is something dysfunctional, so definitely there is need to work upon that. Can we conclude the session?
Yes.